All right, hey, and thank you for watching this video. This is Micah here with you for a few minutes. If you happen to be on this video, I certainly, of course, encourage or welcome you to like or subscribe if anything makes sense. But just talking right into the concepts of, if you're like me, right, you're maybe like a sales type of person, right, in some respect, right? Maybe you're not necessarily like a lot of those alpha type salespeople that are in your face with a suit and tie type, but maybe you're maybe a somewhat more of a Columbo type, right? You like to speak a little less, talk softly, carry a big stick, if that makes sense. In other words, get some results, right? And who am I? I mean, I don't claim to be anybody special or some guru that's a huge earner, etc. But what I can say is that I personally closed up to thousands of sales, right? Thousands of personal sales in different types. So I'm just saying, imagine yourself getting better responses from your prospects, right? Imagine yourself getting to yes more, right? A positive response. Like, think about it, right? What would a positive response a higher percentage of the time do for your business, right? And what is that a positive response? Well, it could be depends on what you're asking for, what the next proposal step is. Are you inviting your prospect to look at some presentation about your product or service or your offer or opportunity or whatever it is? Or are they already have they've already looked at it and you're inviting them to actually take action, right, if you will, to close the sale, if you will, right? And you want to get to a positive response, because a lot of times it's just about getting permission, right? Even when we get down to the close, a lot of times we're really just looking to get permission to continue and actually close the sale, right? So, and for just a few of those things, a few of those tips that I think go into getting more positive responses. And let me know if you feel like any of these helps, or if you disagree with some of it, by all means, whatever your comments are. I mean, by all means, I appreciate your feedback and engagement, of course, but just saying, hey, one element that goes into getting a positive response. Of course, some people would talk about the concept, maybe one person might think about it as praying for positive results, maybe from a Christian perspective or a religious perspective. Maybe another person perceives it as about a mantra or a saying, or another person thinks about it the power of positive thinking, or another person thinks about The Secret, the book or whatever, about the way we think affecting our results. And even if you're not a supernatural type of believer of some kind, maybe you can see the sense in creating the possibility by having the mind open to the possibility that you might get more results than you might have previously expected. By saying some positive affirmations to yourself that are maybe beyond your belief a little bit, like, everybody's going to tell me yes today, right? Maybe a good amount of them tell you no, and you're not just losing it. Hey, you're not trying to be delusional about it, but you're being optimistic about it. You're saying, yeah, hey, look, I'm gonna somehow break through. Something's gonna happen. And same understanding that takes also trying, making an effort, right? Not just talk, right? It's not just talk. That next person I talk to is going to be the client, and understand that it might not happen. No, but at the same time, you're creating the possibility, right? You're creating the possibility in your mind that you might make $1,000 for the day, or something that's within the realm of at least physically possible, right? Not saying to go way outside of the box, but to a degree, going above your comfort zone, right? Going above your comfort zone, what you think it might actually happen for you, right? So thinking positive. Another thing about getting a positive response from our prospects, many times, in my opinion, is my experience is, we don't want to judge their previous experiences, decisions, right? Their previous decisions. Like, for example, if you're selling a car and your guy, or whoever drives up in a car, their car, you think it's a junk car, or it's one thing to give someone some honest opinion, some honest critique, but it's another thing to make someone feel bad about their previous decisions. Oh, why are you driving that piece of junk? Why are you using that piece of crap? Or, hey, that's really a stupid thing to have bought, or whatever, right? Making someone feel bad, right? That'll often get someone to shut down or give you a negative response, even when the offer does really make sense for them. They'll oftentimes they'll take it personal, right? Maybe. So that's one thing. Not prejudging, like not judging our prospect for previous purchases, for example, right? Previous business transactions. That's one thing, right? They're not judging our prospect. Right. Also, not prejudging is a factor as well. Prejudging our prospect, assuming that they're going to say no or they're going to be negative, right, without even actually making our proposal or asking any kind of closing question, like if I did, would you, or if it was fair enough, would you go ahead and get started today, or whatever your closing question is for the next step, right? We're talking about just getting a positive response, right? Maybe sometimes that's a smaller step at a time. It's not necessarily going to the final step, realizing, hey, what stage am I at in my process of sales, right? What stage am I at? Am I just trying to get them to look at complete information so they understand something? Or am I trying to get them to fully take action because they've already gotten to that point? Am I trying to get a second exposure or some kind or something like that, right? So those are one thing, right? And another thing too is repeat exposure and repeat closes, right? And not making someone feel bad about saying no to you, right? Not making them feel like they can't say no to you. And understanding that, yeah, in the process of getting to yes, you are going to get no's. No, nobody's a perfect salesperson, right? Obviously, every salesperson fails, right? At some point, they have somebody that doesn't buy their product or service. They probably have countless people, especially anybody that has experience, right? But if you think, well, one thing I need to do in each time is actually push for the close a little bit by asking them, well, if it was affordable, would you have gotten started today? Or if the terms were reasonable, would that have been fair enough? Or could we welcome you to the such and such family, or whatever that closing question is? Or maybe it's just inviting them to watch or engage in or attend some kind of presentation, right? And we're just talking about getting butts in seats, right? Getting people in front of some kind of information or presentation, or getting yourself in front of your prospect in some way or another, right? To perform or have a presentation performed on our behalf. Maybe that's the closing question. We're just going for that one step, trying to get someone into a presentation instead of trying to move the cart before the horse and getting all the way to a close before someone even has had a presentation about our product or service, right? Also taking off the pressure to go any further than the one ask, right? Like inviting someone to witness some kind of presentation or demonstration. We're not necessarily expecting them to buy something per se. Same time, being honest and or to some degree about our intent. Maybe not phrasing it like, oh, after this I'm going to be asking you to buy this and all that stuff. Some people go with that kind of approach, but more like saying, hey, obviously I'm actually trying to be number one. And that's based on sales, and not everybody. I'm just like I have to do 3 of these presentations today. Or I have to have 2 of these done. Whatever it is, it's the reasons why you're inviting them to take a look at what you have, right, with no expectation or pressure to actually do anything based on it per se, right? And that's taking off the pressure to buy or join something, right? That's gonna oftentimes get people to say, okay, well, I'll take a look, right? If that makes sense, I'll take a look. Because a lot of times it's hard to get people to get into a presentation situation. Wouldn't you agree? No more wrong, if you're at a car lot and someone's genuinely coming to look and shop for cars, it's possibility that they'll let you do a demonstration, a test drive or something. But oftentimes they're like, hey, I'm just looking, right? Same time, right? Same time, a lot of times in sales and business, we're going after our market. They're not even necessarily expecting us. Maybe you knock doors or you're out in a home show or something. They're not necessarily expecting to talk to you per se. They didn't come to you necessarily. You're approaching them in some way, right? How do we get positive response out of them? Well, one thing is conveying trust, right? Having a reasonably clean-cut image. It doesn't mean that, you can't have like a beard or a tattoo is going to be a deal breaker or something like that. But, same time, having some level of understanding, you want to be trustworthy, right? You want your prospect to feel like they can trust you to give them an honest feedback, to not be, someone that they can trust, right? That's why they will say yes to, engaging with you further, right? They want to like you as well, right? So imagine you're going to have more prospects liking you because you're not putting them under the pressure so much. But you are being honest about your intentions. Hey, I'm trying to be the number one in this area and such. Of course, I'd welcome you. I'm in a contest. The reason why you're asking them to take a look, or maybe even at the end of a presentation to buy or join something, right? So those are a couple of factors, right? A couple of factors. And then also asking multiple times for the close from a different angle, like you said, without making them feel bad about saying no, right? You're asking for a different angle, adding different value, right? And each time we ask something. So giving them a new piece of information so they can make a new decision, right? Maybe if you're getting to a close and you've asked someone to get started with something and they're saying, oh, no, I can't do it right now because of such and such. I don't have money to whatever, or we can't afford such and such right now, or I'm not ready for that, whatever it is, right? You're maybe giving you some new information, maybe you're planting seeds too as well. Things like, hey, I am in a contest and, I'm actually out here doing such, and then at the end, hey, I'm trying to win this contest, if I was able to possibly, this is kind of hypothetical, but if there was any way we can make the down payment more affordable and the monthly was still within the such and such range, I can't guarantee nothing, but if there's any way I can get some help with that, would you be able to get started today, or would I be able to welcome you today? Some hypothetical closing too is another idea, right? Let me know if any of these kind of maybe, hit home for you at all. Maybe you use some of these ideas, right? But like I said, alternative choice, of course, is one thing too as well to get a lot of people to move forward with something. If you had got one, would you have gotten the automatic, or would you think you would have went with the 5-speed, or or do you think you would have went with a home on the such and such lot, or would you have preferred the properties on the south side of town? Or if you had to choose one over the other, right? That's another thing, alternative choice, right? But asking multiple times as well, right? The new piece of information, and the reason why you're asking again, right? A reason why you're asking again. And this is something to consider too when we're asking for a close in a sale. It takes multiple times, oftentimes, to get a yes, right? I have people that I talk to that might told me no 2, 3, 4, 5 times in the past, and I let them have time in between. I space them out, and maybe it's sporadic touch base back with somebody that I've talked to before that have told me no, right? And then maybe oftentimes I get a positive response, right? Because I didn't paint them into a corner about last time. Oh, you told me no last time. Or maybe I might say, hey, I know last time it wasn't the right time for you, but, I was in the area again. I just thought I'd ask, hey, if I pop by real quick, if I gave you a quick quote, or if I gave you a quick I had to do 2 more of these demos before the end of the day. If you hold on, I'll be right back in my equipment, and just kind of be subtly assumptive, right? Subtly assumptive is another thing to get agreement to continue, right, with the next step, right? And assumptive to the point where, you're giving them an opportunity to tell you no. You don't want to make them feel like pressured about something, only if they're genuinely looking like they're on the fence about something, right? Subtly continue, right? Say, the initial payment would only be $390, and the monthly would be such and such, or whatever, and we can go ahead and set that up with such and such. How would you like to handle the initial $390? Would you use check or debit card, or something like that, to subtly move forward, right? To progress, to get subtle agreement. If they don't say anything or they shake your hand, right? You can continue. They're saying yes, essentially, right? So this is just a couple of concepts. Let me know if you watch this video, if anything here helps. You might like some other video where I talk about some other concepts of obtaining more sales, transactions, closing the sales, but also a lot of times, really, in my opinion, opening the sales, because they open the presentations, because that's what happens. And most times, a lot of times, salespeople try to get sales before they've even had a presentation. And this is a big concept I think helps for a lot of salespeople in many different businesses for personal selling purposes, but also training your teams, right? Is the concept of 2 complete presentations a day, every day, right? Personally being responsible for 2 complete presentations every day. Maybe it's more, maybe it's 3 or 4, maybe it depends on what your business is. Maybe sometimes your business might have a shorter presentation, you need 5 or 10 presentations, or maybe it's only 1 presentation a day. Every day is a big deal. Maybe if you're touring, real estate or something, maybe you're happy to have that. Maybe try to book groups up together where you can do a presentation in some kind of group or group tour or something like that. Right. That also gets you extra buy-in to get yes more of the times, right? Referencing a friend, a neighbor, a relative. Hey, Sherry, or John, or whoever. So, well, they recommended you and spoke highly of you. Edification, not putting down any previous decisions that your prospect has made, right? That's a big deal, right? But also another big thing, like I said, repeat ask with new information each time. Say, hey, look, I was actually working on the contest, and such and such, and if there's any way I could do such and such. You're getting some new reasons why you're asking. Or, hey, since this one here was actually a demo model, and I only have 2 more left, and we've already had a bit of production today, and the manager was in a pretty good mood. I just thought I'd ask maybe if I was able to get you such and such situation where this was more agreeable or affordable, or if this was more doable, and this and that was just like what we talked about. Would we be able to welcome you to the such and such family today, or would that be reasonable, or would that be doable today with what you have available today, right? So these are just a few closing concepts, right? And I don't claim to be like the master. There's plenty of other people that have all kinds of different ideas. So I say, learn from all of them, even here on maybe this platform, wherever you're watching this. But also read some books, right? Maybe a few, like Zig Ziglar, there's really many other ones, but I'm just thinking off the top of my head, Ernest Nightingale, right? Or Ernest Nightingale, I believe his name is, right? Napoleon Hill, right? Tom Hopkins, right? Zig Ziglar is one of the first ones that I personally have read, right? A salesperson, and understanding how to, just personally create that relationship with every one of your prospects, and also to be good at building rapport and test closing and actually getting the transaction a lot of the time, whether you're selling cars, if you're selling appliances in the home or at a showroom or something, or doing a tour for a timeshare, or taking someone to a property and getting them down to the table to be able to show them numbers and ask for the order. But like I said, learning a lot of test closing, right? Hypothetical closing. If such and such was such and such way, would you have gotten started today? If this was affordable, do you think you would like to have this? Or stuff like that, right? Those are questions that can get people to maybe say yes, because it's not a huge commitment. But another thing too is clarity, right? Clarity, right? A lot of times we don't create enough clarity for our prospect to say yes or give us a positive response. They have something in their mind, a perception. We didn't clear it up to what we're asking or what we're talking about a little bit more specifically, right? But getting right to the point too as well, because especially with a cold call, right? You don't have much time to set a first impression, if that makes sense, right? You just set a good first impression within the first 3 seconds that you can, to where they, let me hear what he's saying, what she's talking about, whatever it is, right? To have them listen more, right? And asking a small ask, not overwhelming your prospect. In other words, you're not chasing your prospect so much. You're kind of letting them know about a good value. You're giving them an opportunity to look. You're urgent. You're on the run to another prospect. Because going back to this one concept that I was talking about, 2 presentations a day every day, means you have to talk to, probably more than 2 people in most businesses, right? You need to talk to 10 or 20 or 30 people or whatever to get however many complete presentations out of the way. So that means, you want to be saying less to more people to start booking appointments. Same time, be aware of your market. I mean, if you pay a high dollar for leads, you want to be able to have a system for converting, right? Getting them to take a look, right? Or something like that, right? So a situation where you only have so much territory or something like that, right? Same time, always leave your prospect on a good note, right? So that they might say yes the next encounter, right? So they don't feel, I said no to that person, they got rude with me, never, that's it. That totally kills the deal, right? Most, like 90% of the time. So don't make it feel bad. Make your prospect feel bad about a no, if that makes sense. And let them tell you no, and be able to take no for an answer, right? Respectfully, right? To be able to take no for an answer, and don't come across desperate, right? Your prospect can see that, but rather come across as excited, enthused, urgent, right? You're motivated for such, and you're trying to be the number 1 rep. But that's based on sales. To be honest, I appreciate y'all letting me show this today, or let me go over this info with you a little bit today, or whatever. They give you a quote today, or whatever it is, right? So you can complete a presentation, but at the same time, they're in the mindset of understanding that you'd like to make the sale. You would like to make the sale. They understand that you would like to make the sale, right? You understand that, they're not necessarily going to buy anything, and you're okay with that. At the same time, you might subtly ask 2 to 6 times for the order, right? Subtly ask for, what do you think? Maybe if the initial payment was, maybe if it was, how much too much do you think it was with what you had available with today? How much too much was it with the down payment? Was it $100 too much? And then, if you like, just with what you have available today, if you were to get started with it today, how much too much would the initial installment had been? Was it $100 too much? Use some subtle language. It's not necessarily, this is a contract. This is an agreement, right? An arrangement. Don't beat around the bush all crazy, but use use some soft language, if that makes sense, to help you get more yeses, more positive responses. And imagine yourself now talking to more prospects with that laid back, confident, but urgent, enthusiastic mindset. You're getting your 10 presentations out of the way. You don't care about a sale, right? So then you're asking for the order, you're going for the sale, yes. So then you're getting your 10 plus presentations out of it. You're even getting 15 presentations. You're going a little bit above and beyond. Before you know it, you have 2, 3, 4, 5 sales. Before you know it, you're getting sharper. You're at a 50+% closing rate or something, right? Because all of a sudden you're identifying what to look for better. You're getting sharper through practice, right? That's going to help you get more yeses. Your prospect will sense it. They'll see it. Now, if you're desperate for that one prospect, you come across as like, hey, you're trying to really pressure that prospect. You're going to spend too much time with less prospects, right? For one thing, and not probably get your 10 plus presentations knocked out. Or whatever that goal is, right? And then another thing is your prospect's going to sense it. They're going to see that you're desperate, and they're going to say, no, you know what? We don't need it, right? Because you do, right? But we know the law of attraction, right? The law of attraction says that people want what they can't have, right? So create a little scarcity in yourself. You're not there to make someone see that you have gold in the hills. You're there to tell them about it. You can give them maybe a little bit of that, verification, but you're not here to beg them to come help you dig it out of the ground. You're giving them an opportunity. You're giving your prospect an opportunity. And that's what it should be. Your prospect should be the winner, right? Or at least a winner, right? In this situation. So anyway, hey, like I said, imagine yourself getting to yes more often, getting more positive responses, getting your foot in the door more often, getting more presentations out of the way more often, right? Without the stress or the pressure, and maybe even creating more dynamic results and creating those, multiple thousands or even 5-figure months. And even just with personal selling in many cases, depends on what you're doing. If you sell cars, it's possible, certainly. If you sell homes, certainly. If you sell smaller ticket items, hey, you can get pretty good with getting to yes more often, the slightly higher percentage of the time, that can make a big deal, especially you're talking to or you're communicating with a good number of prospects, a good number of people. Anyway, let me know if this helps, if you see value in any of these few just basic concepts here to help, create, like I said, a good positive first impression, build trust, and not creating too much pressure, not making your prospect feel bad, not painting anybody into a corner, right? Leaving people an out, if you want, allowing them to tell honestly, because at the same time, you don't want cancellations for no good reason. For example, you want solid sales, right? Same time, you want people to sense that you are trying to be a winner, if that makes sense, because then they're going to say, yeah, I want to support a winner. People don't want to support a loser. They want to support a winner. So that's the way you want to come across with your prospect, right? You're trying to win in life, or whatever it is. Then they'll support you more, right? Many of them will, right? Anyway, this is just a few concepts. Let me know if you watch, if you happen to like, or certainly maybe leave a comment if any of it's helpful, or let me know what you do, and certainly appreciate your feedback. I know that a lot of people are way more experienced than me with this kind of thing, but hey, maybe these are just a few concepts that might apply for your situation better than maybe for some other people, maybe some other things you've tried. Anyway, look forward to seeing you in the next video. In the meantime, maybe check out if there is another video at the end here. Maybe feel free to check it out. I certainly welcome you to. Maybe drop me a line. We'll see you next time. See you in the next video.